Epigraph. One last and divinely cursed. 32 millennia ago, the worlds were at war. They warred not amongst themselves, but with a witch. Her aim was to destroy the worlds along with their inhabitants, and so the worlds retaliated for their survival. Lucario Sariu, a recounting of the Regledition. Prologue, the Garden of Durm. The seers are right after all. Those were the words the Queen's advisors had said 7 weeks ago, back when she believed all they had presented to her was just another specimen for the garden, back when she wondered why the Queen herself had come to visit hours later to examine it and request that she investigate it. What the seers had actually said to prompt the fairies to go to another world to unearth this newest discovery, Scarlet had no idea. But she knew it was important enough to warrant the weekly visits of the Queen and her advisors. And now, soon darkness would fall. Soon it would begin twitching. Scarlet closed the door behind her and silently watched her charges. Dangerous specimens they all were, yet they paled in comparison to that thing. The royal greenhouses had been virtually empty today because of the holiday. Yet she was among the few servants who remained to work. Her subordinates had insisted earlier that she relieve herself and join them for the festivities. It was the Ravikari after all, but she had turned them all down with a regretful smile, all the while hoping she hid well the true depths of her reluctance. Her fellow gardeners' entreaties had only reminded Scarlet of her father and brother's discontentment when she had told them days before that she wouldn't be able to join them the night of Ravikari, even though they had spent days traveling with the masses to come here to the capital. It had taken great pains to convey her reasons, that as the head gardener of the Garden of Durm, it was naturally her obligation to oversee the dangerous specimen and their volatile behavior daily. If only that was her primary reason for being here. It was a shame, though. A servant had informed her just over an hour ago that Queen Silinar had conceded to her request that a replacement come and relieve her. Given the Queen's general benevolence in their exchanges, Scarlet couldn't say she had not been expecting such a turn in events. But she couldn't have said as much to her family, in the case that she was only giving them false hope. But those thoughts only brought her back to the present, whereupon Scarlet noticed and quickly halted the incessant tapping of her fingers against her leg. Part of her wanted to go back outside and inspect the other plants again. Loath as she was to shirk the task her queen had given her, staying in this glasshouse hours on end with such an oppressive, chilling aura was insufferable. True, some of the other plants held dark auras of their own, but nothing akin to this special charge that could hardly be called a plant. In spite of her repulsion, she found herself walking down the 6th row of plants. She had no choice. She had to inspect it once more at the least. Her fingers moved like clockwork as Scarlet stroked the leaves of some plants with magic to sedate them as night approached. Otherwise, they would be roused into violent activity, like spewing acid or fire. But this round, the routine did more than settle the plants. It settled her nerves. Anyone unfamiliar with these plants feared this garden, but years of training and study as a shadow bane had long abated any previous qualms she once harbored. Now she knew each and every one of their habits and patterns, along with the corresponding spells and enchantments to deal with them. If only that thing was as manageable. If only she knew how to subdue it. The scholar in her was nettled at the thought of her continuous failures to find such a way, and was further agitated that she had allowed an object to study to unsettle her so. Still, she managed to press onward, and the walk to the end seemed to last forever. When at last she reached it, she stared with dread at a lone table where lay the specimen encased in enchanted glass, the plant that was not a plant. It was a black rose. A mere passerby would have admired it for a simple and beautiful flower on the verge of blooming, and they would have walked on, ignorant to the fact that its origins were far more complex and horrific. But then she too was ignorant. Still, if only she could know the extent of her own ignorance. Scarlet took a sharp breath. She staggered back, trembling in spite of herself. She somehow managed to quell the urge shrieking at her to take flight and call for a servant. No, she would have to do so using a scryglass, because she could not leave such a thing unattended now, because she knew she had not imagined it. The whisper had spoken within her head in the Korean tongue. 3 words had hissed into her brain like a rush of steam. No, like a dying snake lusting for vengeance. Free me, Scarlet.